Good afternoon, and welcome to the Future of Food Pantries. Over the next 50 minutes, we're going to be discussing the future of feeding programs. So my name is Renata Memoli Gavush. I am the Assistant Director for Program Operations at CEO. We are a community action agency based out of Troy, New York. And today I am being joined by a great group of panelists. Jackie Bogart is here, lending her voice and advocacy as a member of the Speaker Bureau out of the Food Bank of the Southern Tier. Also, Brittany Christensen, a pioneer of food security projects and the executive director of ADK Action, addressing unmet needs and promoting community throughout the Adirondacks. Also, we have Devin Bulger, co-founder and executive director of Comfort Food Community, providing food access, food recovery, and community health services throughout 3 counties. And Michael Cervello, founder and CEO of the Compassion Coalition's Bargain Grocer, an innovative community-focused approach to combating food waste while increasing food accessibility and food equity. So thank you all for joining us here today. I'm really excited to hear all of your thoughts on these questions. In the interest of time, we're just going to jump right in. COVID has had a dramatic effect on our way of life. I think we've all experienced this over the past, even over a year now. How did your programs operate prior to COVID, and how have your programs evolved from the start of the pandemic?
I'll jump in and take that one. Thanks, Renata, and just great to be with everybody. I think we could all say for sure COVID has marked all of our lives indelibly forever. The suffering and the people out of work, people dying alone. It's a once in a lifetime event that none of us will ever forget. And I think for all of us, it's increased our compassion and sense of mission for what we're doing. It's made us much more passionate about what we're doing. One of the things that we have learned to really value is our volunteers. You realize when these kind of things happen and there's so much need, so whatever volunteer base you had pre-pandemic, you needed more during the pandemic because there was so much more need. And so I'd say the value of our workers. Something that we had an event about 20 plus years ago in upstate New York. Some of you might remember it. There was a late spring ice storm. We were operating a food pantry in our inner city, and when the ice storm hit, it put such a demand. It was people were just flowing into the food pantries, and the food ran out immediately, and there wasn't any more HEPNET money or more money to buy the food. And it started to cost us thousands of dollars to keep those shelves full. And I started to realize something, that what we were doing was not sustainable, and that we had to look for another way, a supplemental way. And that was the genesis for why we started Bargain Grocer. Actually, we started Compassion Coalition to have a site in Utica to receive large volumes of food to supplement the food pantries, to make sure that never happened again. But then we also began to realize people wanted food access. One thing we could joke around about, we realized the importance of is toilet paper. I mean, who would have thought and hand sanitizer during the pandemic? But we had it all the way through. People need food access. And so that is why we started Bargain Grocer, a low-cost food store in a food desert, in a place where people don't have access, and where the majority of people don't have cars. They have to walk. And people also want choice. They want to be able to have access and be able to choose what they want when they want it. We distributed probably, I'm going to guess, 50,000 USDA food boxes during the pandemic, at least. And at times, it's kind of disheartening when you're giving a food box and people would open it up, look through it, and throw some of the things on the ground because they didn't want them. And here everybody's going with such a good heart. We want to help and distribute, but oftentimes it's not what they want or what they need. And so our whole approach has been give them access and give them choice. And it worked really, really well. We were open all during the pandemic, and we were just inundated. It was overwhelming, the amount of people that we helped and the people that flowed through the store. So that's my bit there.
Thank you, Mike.
Renata, can I jump in as well?
Absolutely, Brittany.
Yeah, so here at ADK Action, we have a diverse portfolio of projects, and one of those projects is the Keysville Pharmacy. And the Keysville Pharmacy was, it continues to be a pharmacy with a PH in the downtown of Keysville, which became a food desert about 6 years ago after the loss of its grocery store, a trend that we're seeing in a lot of rural areas. In fact, in the Adirondack North Country region, we've seen the loss of 12 grocery stores that closed permanently in the last decade. And so our small communities can't support grocers here, traditional grocers. And so you're finding that there will be many large grocers in places like Plattsburgh and Ticonderoga where you have those population bases. But for a lot of our residents, they're driving half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour and a half even to get groceries. And so for this particular model in Keysville, the pharmacy had a pharmacy section that was about 2/3 of the store, and then a Radio Shack franchise in the other 1/3. And so Radio Shack went out of business, and they had an opening in their storefront. And we said, would you be willing to sell food from local farms in that space instead? And the owner, Dan Bosley, was very amenable to the idea, and that started a super fruitful partnership. We have food products from about 30 different farmers within a 20-mile radius. So hyper local, hyper sustainable type model. And that was really our intro to food access work as an organization. So fast forward to March of 2020, and the pandemic hits. We had really come over the last 4 years to learn a lot about our communities throughout the region. We had started to spread the pharmacy model, adding on 2 additional locations in the region. But we realized that with the storefronts closing, even the pharmacy itself was not open to the public. They couldn't come in the store, but they could order online and come pick up curbside, or order on the phone and pick up curbside. So we realized delivery was really going to be the key and the next step. So we partnered with our local food hub, the Hub on the Hill in Essex. Wonderful model. Google it, all of you listening at home, thehubonthehill.org. And so we partnered with the hub and launched the Emergency Food Packages program. And together we came up with a prototype of what should be in the box. Again, we worked hyper local with our farmers right here in the region. So yogurt, eggs, fresh bread, fresh greens, apples, and then as well as prepared meals, because we knew that a lot of the people we were serving wouldn't necessarily have that access, that ability to cook, or have issues with mobility and other things. So we wanted to keep it as simple as possible. So we came up with our prototype. And then we launched a fundraiser online, and we were floored by the response from our community.
That's awesome.
We set out to raise $55,000 to deliver 100 food packages a week for 10 weeks, and we ended up raising over $150,000, and then garnering another $225,000 in grants. And all together, we got out over 65,000 packages. So it was just incredible.
It's fantastic.
Thank you. And so we engaged so many volunteers, so many farmers. We connected with a bunch of organizations that we hadn't worked with much in the past. So JCEO, the Joint Council for Economic Development, ACAP, and Community Connections. And they acted as our referral partners and told us who needed the food. And then we would coordinate the routes and work with the hub to get the food from the farmers, package it, process it, and then get it delivered right to the homes.
Very good.
Sorry to go on and on, but
that's awesome.
Things really changed for us in COVID, and now we're working on how do we make these exciting changes permanent. What can we take from these experiences and then carry them forward to continue to serve the community?
Very good. Very good.
Absolutely. Devin, would you like to share any thoughts on this?
Sure, yeah. As you mentioned in the intro, our work falls into 3 program areas, roughly: food access, food recovery, and food as medicine or community health. And each of those programs was impacted in, a little bit of a different way. Food access is really us managing 2 pantries right in the Greenwich area. So Greenwich is in Washington County, a little bit, we're kind of in between the Capital District and the Southern Adirondacks. So we had to go through a lot of those, safety protocols, curbside pickup, prepackaged boxes. But we found out pretty quickly that one of the things that we offer in our pantry model, which is set up a lot more like a grocery store, people come in and actually shop with shopping carts. It is the traditional pantry model in that there's no money changing hands, but we try to make it as independent and as choice filled as possible. And the curbside and the pre-packed boxes was meeting that hunger, that food insecurity need, but we were eliminating choice in that pre-packing. So it is, as soon as CDC guidelines and our own internal controls and protocols made it feel like it was safe enough to do so, we started to do what we called metered shopping. So METERED, like metering traffic. So we would have people come to the parking lot and either call in an order, or we would have someone greet them in the parking lot, and we would limit how many shoppers could be in the building at a time. And then we just limited contact as much as we could. We did experiment with some transportation and delivery, and in a few really extreme cases where someone was homebound and just did not have transportation, we were able to connect them with a volunteer. But the logistics of that were a little bit beyond us. So Brittany and 80K Action, kudos to you for figuring out those logistics. Yeah, and then I think that we've kind of been on this pendulum of, we got very conservative people in and no people in, and then have started to open up now that CDC guidelines are feeling a little bit more relaxed, still requiring masks and all of that. With some of our other program areas, so food recovery, we recover food from a lot of our local farms. Southern Washington County is really a very productive area in terms of farming. We on the distribution side of that food all flows out throughout Washington County and Southern Warren County. So we did a lot more pre-packing of boxes just to limit contact, and some of the mobile market things that we had been doing. We'll look to this summer, hopefully bring back some more of that mobile option. And then community health was all over the place. We did stay at the Glens Falls Farmers Market with our food pharmacy program, or produce prescription program, I should say. We had to suspend our food pharmacy program for a little bit of time, but have mainly been able to keep that going. So it's been all over the place.
Sounds exciting, though. Jackie, do you have any thoughts on that first question before we move on to question 2?
I can just add that as someone who uses the pantries and volunteers at pantries, and I saw that the food bank of the Southern Tier had switched. There was no more mobile food trucks because because of COVID, and so they started doing drive-up distributions, which kind of left the people who walked the mobile food trucks stuck if you didn't have transportation. You couldn't just walk up anymore. So they started doing deliveries, and I think I saw the numbers increasing as time went on, but that for me, that was a concern. How would these people get their food, if they didn't have transportation to drive through anymore? But the deliveries, just as Brittany was saying, they made a big difference, and a lot of people who wouldn't have had food otherwise did because of that.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm going to move on to our second question for the panelists. If there were unlimited resources, if we could only dream, right? How would you like feeding programs to operate, and why? So what would that look like for you? And any of you guys can feel free to jump in.
Can I
can jump in on that. Oh, no, Jackie, you go.
Well, I was just going to say, as again, someone who utilizes these services, if there were unlimited resources, I would say that the support and the inclusion would be the next step for me, beyond food. I mean, it it can help a family move into a position where they would no longer need food. And I think that's kind of, the whole point of this is to not have to need food anymore. So, these things are great, but they'd be even greater if they didn't need to exist. And yeah, that was it.
Thank you. Devin, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, this is a topic that I think about a lot because I think, part of what we say is that our mission is to end hunger. And I think in order to do that, you have to be working towards some systemic and structural changes. And I think a model that we struck on really early on, even before we formed, was the community food center model. So Community Food Centers Canada is an organization that started in Toronto, and they kind of hit on this model, and now they've begun to pilot community food centers across the country. So we actually, when we move to a new location, we call the facility a food center. There's a pantry service that takes place at our food center, but we see the food center as being really a community center with food at its heart. So we want to do not just the distribution of emergency food, but a lot of the wraparound services, the skill building. We have a commercial kitchen there where up until COVID, we were doing community cooking classes, and we were able to have community meals. So we're really bringing people in from all walks of life to just get to know one another and get to know their neighbors and get to kind of break bread and have food be that sort of cultural vehicle for getting to know one another. But I think why the food center model to us is really powerful is that it does have the potential to be that it could have a reason to exist, even if we had universal basic income and all of that sort of resource was applied in the right way in our societies, because food still has a role to play in terms of bringing people together, making them healthier, appreciating the local agriculture that is right at our fingertips. So yeah, the food center model is one that we've been really working towards, and I think in ways hybridizing the emergency food with just fair food pricing like ADK Action does and the Rolling Grocer 19 does down in the Hudson Valley, where, there's, because I think that could also address stigma if people were just getting a good deal on food rather than feeling like they were getting a handout. It would also address some of that while also, supporting local agriculture. And I just think that the food center as this community center where all of that could be taking place could be really dynamic. And we're working to make that.
Thank you, Devin. I love all those ideas. This is giving me lots of food for thought myself for our programs here at CEO. Brittany or Mike, would you like to add anything to Jackie and Devin's thoughts?
Brittany?
Thanks, Mike. Sure. I really think that there's a lot of value in getting people out to the farms. I really believe in, the food system needing to be fixed holistically, in conjunction with providing more support for people to be able to afford and access food. And I had the pleasure of working on an organic farm for 10 years myself, all throughout my 20s. And there's just something about having a true connection to your food, seeing it grow and being able to taste it when it's really fresh, that I think just makes a shift happen in people's mindsets, that really kind of makes a path forward for healthy eating and a healthier lifestyle. So I would love, with unlimited resources, to have programs where community members can help on farms, can volunteer on farms, and get food as a result of that. I'd also love to see, in line with the community food center type mindset, I'd love to see food hub spaces where especially moms can get together and do meal planning for a week. And even prep it together and have that social time and because it's so difficult, it's to find the time, even if you are well resourced, it's difficult to find the time and the headspace to go through that meal planning process. But when you do, you save money, you reduce food waste, you ultimately end up with a healthier menu, you save time. So I'd love to see programs that would allow, with zero stigma for people to come together, make food together, take it home in their Tupperware, and eat it and enjoy it. So those are some pipe dreams.
Well, I'll tell you, you're all making me hungry. It all sounds good. Devin and Brittany, that's amazing. We're more in an urban situation. I would say with unlimited funds to increase EBT and SNAP benefits, so that again, our whole deal is choice, allowing people to come in, purchase their own food with dignity, and be able to have a variety. Food is just plain expensive, and right now we're in an inflationary period. You're going to see I'm dealing with food brokers and growers all over the country, and just you got the fuel costs that have added at least 30% to 50% in transportation costs. You're going to feel the impact of that. All food is going up. And then when in these retail environments, the markup is quite hefty. So, we've gone into the whole food rescue, food recovery, trying to work with growers and shippers and pull food out of the system and make it available to the people in our area, in our food desert, as reasonably as possible, and encouraging them to eat fresh. I would say fresh fruits and vegetables are, if not 50%, 40% of the volume of what we do. We probably go through a full tractor trailer load of fresh produce a week through that store, but very, very, very reasonable. I mean, like a lot of times half the price of what it is in a retail store. So if we had our wish, if a lot of the money that's being spent would be reallocated, give people that increase in their EBT, allow them to go and buy what they wanted, but then also have groups like all of us to say we're going to be in these food deserts and make that available, these healthy choices available at a reasonable cost. So, did I mention we have a kitchen also? We put a commercial kitchen in and have done the very same thing. My daughter films. We got chefs that'll come in and show people, because a lot of people just don't know how to put the meal together, and it's just ingenious. They'll take items that we have and they'll say, look, here's these 3 items or 4 items, and we're going to show you how to make a wonderful meal. And the chef comes in and makes it, and then people come in and buy it, take it home and cook it. It's awesome.
Wow, that's really incredible, Mike. I'm also getting hungry as well, listening to everybody talk. So we're going to talk about, sort of which pandemic changes. Obviously, a lot of changes have happened. Which pandemic induced changes do you think your program will keep, and will you be reverting to pre-pandemic procedures as an alternative to keeping some of those? So sort of, keeping the what do we want to keep and what do we want to toss, right? What do we want to go back to?
I'd love to answer that one. So we, at 80K Action, with our partners at the Hub, we knew we couldn't continue to provide the free meals forever, the free food packages, but we did get a lot of demand from folks. We put out a survey towards the end of the 7 months of the weekly deliveries and asked if folks would be interested in purchasing the food packages at a reduced rate using SNAP. And about half of the people said, yeah, we would like to do that. And so we worked with New York State Health Foundation, Mother Cabrini Foundation, and Adirondack Foundation to make that possible. And I said that I didn't think I'd need to screen share, but I'm going to go ahead and try to, because what we did was set up an online store where people could buy.
Good.
And let's see here. There we go. So you should be able to see the screen now. Okay, great. Yeah, so we created an online store where folks could buy the Farm Fresh packages. We changed the name to remove the emergency title, of course, but they could buy them with the discounts. So here you're seeing the price if you leverage our new Fair Food Pricing Incentive Program, which applies to not just fruits and vegetables, but to all local whole foods produced in the Knight County region. And this also leverages Double Up Food Bucks, which is an amazing program for subsidizing the fruits and vegetables. So now folks can order any of these items. They can order the Farm Fresh packages. We responded to something that came up earlier with other panelists was the need for choice. And we definitely got that feedback as well. This food is great, but I don't eat yogurt, for example. So we created a dairy-free option, a low-carb option, a fruits and veggies only option. So there's all these different options that you can buy within the packages, and then you can add on items a la carte as well. And then the food packages are compiled and delivered to folks' doors on a weekly basis. And right now they can share or they can pay at the door with SNAP, but we're working on the SNAP Online pilot. So we've helped the Hub on the Hill apply to be one of a very small number of firms eligible to accept SNAP benefits online. So they could actually check out on the website, and then when their food package is delivered, they don't need to be there to accept the delivery. We don't have to, try to make sure we have internet connection, which can be a major issue in our more rural areas. So this is the way that we're carrying our pre-pandemic efforts forward.
That's issues. One of the issues we have to face, and you realize it, there was a lot of money flowing in COVID that's drying up. And so I commend you, Brittany, because anything we can do to make ourselves more self-sustaining, to continue to serve the people that we feel a responsibility toward. This is, for us, like, what would I change? We're not changing anything. We changed it 20 years ago and became self-sustaining. We went through the whole evolution that you're looking at. But what's been so wonderful with any of the increase that comes out of the store, we operate our Compassion Coalition Center. That it's a 30,000 square foot distribution center that distributes about $20+ million a year in product. But back to the store, because we're so immersed in the community as all of you are, when some of our community partners, whether it's a school nurse or a human service worker, calls us and said, look, we have a family, they've fallen through the cracks, they can't get any help, they've got 3 children, 5 children, they have no food. When they give us that name, they call our Compassion Center, we generate a gift card, tell them to come to the store, give their name, no embarrassment, they're handed a gift card, and then they're able to go and shop for free because of any of the revenue created by others that are supporting that. So I think you're onto something there. And I think self-sustainability is something we've all got to look at.
That's amazing, Mike. Good for you. That it feels so good to give people that choice, because it really is. There's so much dignity that goes along with choice, and when we remove choice, it really, I think that's the hardest thing for people to deal with, even more so than. There's so many challenges, but I love what you're doing. I love that model of the gift card. Something that we're working on now too is expanding our fair food pricing subsidy past the Hub on the Hill to additional vendors. And so we're adding 5 new vendors this summer, including our pharmacies as well as the farmers markets. And so in order to try to reduce the stigma at the farmers markets and to make it easier to navigate the myriad programs at the market, we're bringing in a company called Red Rose from Ireland, and they create these gift cards that have multiple wallet functionality. So instead of, I know it's a little confusing, I'll explain. But so right now, when you go to the farmer's market, you might use your EBT card and exchange that for tokens. You might also be able to match those tokens with Double Up Food Bucks tokens. And you might also have Fresh Connect checks. You might also have WIC checks. And then you might also have ADK Action's new fair food pricing incentive. And that's a lot to navigate. That's a lot of programs to figure out. You've got a purse or a handful of things and you're not sure which vendor takes what or how to use it. So this card system that we're going to be piloting has the ability to put each of those benefits digitally into a different wallet. And then there's a pretty slick app that you can use to redeem the benefits with the vendors.
Wow.
And we're trying to use that in the context of our beneficiaries, our participants in the program, but also have donors in the community who want to support the local food system and support their neighbors use the card as well, where they would, they would pay in and basically exchange money for the card. That way the vendor doesn't know if it's someone who's supporting someone else or someone who's receiving that support. So that's what we're really working on this summer.
That is great. You know, I wanted to mention too, one of the things that has happened organically in our store, people would go through and they would see like a single mom or somebody with EBT struggling, and it started off, this one lady came to me and she said, I want to give $200 to help. How do I help? I said, well, how about this? How about you buy, or you go to the cashier and get 20 $10 gift cards. And what we'll do is we'll make that, we'll tell the cashier, anyone that goes through with EBT, $10 will come off their bill, or a single mom. Well, she did it, and we're standing there talking. The first person through the line is a single mom with, I don't know how many kids she had. She spent $10 and say 12 cents. She gives her a $10 bill and she's counting out her pennies, and the cashier hands her back $10. And she said, somebody gifted you that. Well, she bursts out in tears because that was her last $10 for the month. Well, the lady sees it. She breaks down in tears. And now what's happened, that happens on a regular basis. And I hope that happens for you. See, that's community helping community. And at the same time, preserving a person's sense of dignity, right? So I think it's a great thing you're doing, Brittany.
It's great that you can allow people to buy gift cards and pay it forward in that way. I love that.
Yeah, you
cry just hearing the story.
Well, you'll have that same thing happen because you've got a generous community, and people just want to know how to help and give people choice with dignity. I think it's great. It's great.
Thank you, guys. There's so much innovation going on. I'm really wowed and impressed. Before we move on, I don't know if Jackie or Devin had any thoughts on pandemic changes, what we're keeping, what we're getting rid of.
Jackie, anything? Mainly, for the most part, we are just trying to get back to pre-pandemic protocols still, because so much of what we had to table was the social interactions, the educational things, the community meals, and kind of the non-emergency, just community-wide type things. I think one aspect that we'll keep is in our fresh food collective distributions, which is that food that we're bringing out onto the road in the 3-county area, is we're probably going to continue to box some of that. And some of that's just logistical, so we can reach more locations, more communities, without having to stop for the mobile market. I think long term we want to come back to the mobile thing, but when we've retooled and are able to do more kind of hybrid, some like sliding scale acceptance of some benefits, and actually have a vehicle that's outfitted to be able to do that off of the vehicle, kind of like Capital Roots or some of those models. Food Links has a lot of those mobile fleets that are really interesting. But I think right now we just want to make sure that fresh food is flowing out to the communities as much as possible.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you. I know that there have been some questions in the comments, so we will kind of get to those towards the end of the presentation, just for those who are putting those comments in there. We're not ignoring you. So what opportunities for enhanced collaboration and partnership would you like to see happen, and what would it look like? I know that collaboration and partnership are, really huge and are really important for all of us to be successful. So I'd love to hear some thoughts on that.
I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I can try to keep it somewhat streamlined. But because I think that there's embers and examples of a lot of good collaborations and collaborative structures that are in place, and some of them are new and fledgling, some of them are a little bit more established. But I mean, I think our host organization, Food Pantries of the Capital District, is a great example of that collaboration, of shared infrastructure. They kind of can play this role of data gathering and information gathering with Oasis Insights and some of that work that they're doing behind the scenes, and allowing those front-facing pantries to just do what they do best, which is, be a part of the community and make sure that, people are being fed. So I think that, we have achieved a certain amount of professionalism and actual staff rather than only volunteers, and have looked at ways that we might be able to play a little bit more of that role in maybe just Washington County, or maybe, somewhere in a catchment area. Because I just think that it makes sense to share resources, whether they're digital or physical or whatever it might look like. I think the CBO consortiums that have kind of sprung out of the performing provider system, that the whole DSRIP world, have been really interesting in the way that they're adapting post-DSRIP funds to maintain services. So Adirondack Health Institute is one that we participate with, and then Alliance for Better Health. I think Alliance for Better Health has the really interesting IPA model, which is Independent Physician Association, but they're actually adopting it for CBO, community-based organizations like ours that I think, again, could be this technical assistance, shared resources, and I think hopefully figuring out the, sort of the food as medicine payment system, and being a bigger negotiator than what individual CBOs might be able to be. So I think that's just some exciting things that are happening, as well as ADK Action and Comfort Food Community. We're on a recently formed, what are we calling that, Brittany? Adirondack Food Systems?
Yeah, Adirondack Food System Network.
Yes, that one too. So a lot of good stuff like that happening, that I just think the more that we can, align efforts, align resources, and align our voices from an advocacy standpoint, the bigger impact and sustained impact we can have.
Absolutely. Thank you. Brittany or Mike, do you guys have thoughts on that? Or Jackie?
Well, we had talked earlier when we first met about the idea of some kind of a vehicle or a medium to share excess inventories. I know that larger food organizations oftentimes get inundated with one or two products, and you don't want this to go to waste, right? You want to make sure it gets to those in need. And I think we all get busy, we're all focused, but if there was some kind of a mechanism that we could share with one another and say, we've got a abundance of, because I think that the companies that donate in different regions produce different products, right? And so every different food bank, food pantry, food rescue, food recovery has access to different goods. And so instead of turning it down, I think if we had something to share with each other. Also, I wanted to put out there, during the off months, I know that if this could help you, if you have to buy produce, we're working with growers all over the country and bringing in fruits, vegetables. We'd be glad to share that with you. You share it with our cost and whatever the transportation is. Like loads of, I know, potatoes and onions and, tomatoes. Those are all staple products that people need. And oftentimes when you go to buy them, I know that you're not getting the best price because profit starts to get in the way. So we'd be glad to help if we could. But I think by all of us sharing, something's offered that we can't take, communicate with one another, share part of it. I think that would be great. That'd be great.
Thank you, Mike. Those are some really great suggestions. And just in the interest of time, I'm gonna move on to our last question so that we can get to some of our questions in the comments. Stigma has come up a couple of times throughout this panel so far. How do you suggest we work to reduce stigma and to provide an inclusive experience? And I don't know if this is something, who wants to take us, but Jackie, I'm sure you have some insights to this as well.
Yeah, thank you. I do. Yes, absolutely. I think just maybe perhaps considering when you get a new volunteer or someone who has even been there for a while, trauma-informed care training or anything like that that you could give to a volunteer, so they have a better understanding of, that people have there's something behind where they're at right now, and just the smallest, slightest look on somebody's face. I mean, that can deter them from coming back again for a year or two. And on the other hand, a warm smile can bring them right back in the next time they're able to and when they need it. So, I mean, just that connection and being very careful of how you're connecting.
Very good. So true. So true.
Thank you, Jackie. Does any of the other panelists have thoughts on just, general ideas on reducing stigma or specific things that we can do to provide a more inclusive experience?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it comes back to the food center model, because I think that, so in a small community, everyone's up in everyone's business. It's just hard to avoid that. But if a destination is not exclusively known as a place where needy people or people that are in need are going, if it's just, a community center with food at its heart, and it's a little bit, people could be going in there for various and sundry reasons for all sorts of different things. And if there's this hybrid of retail and sort of charitable emergency distribution, and maybe it's this, it's blind at the point of sale as to what the sliding scale is and whether you're paying full rate or, half or zero, then you kind of blur the lines between giver, receiver, taker. So I think that is really important. I think choice in every way that you can make choice available is really important. And then I think creating volunteer opportunities for people that are using services, obviously not like guilting or requiring, like making sure that if someone does want to give back in some way, that those opportunities are known and easy to just jump in and be a part of.
That's so good, Devin. I think what he's saying is so true. We're building community and a place for people to come together as community, where they don't feel any stigma. I had someone the other day say to me, was a city official. He said, "What I appreciate about your store is I'm working with someone that's in a recovery. Let's put it that way. Really difficult time of life, struggling." And he said, "I bring her to your store, and there's somebody from the court system, and usually you'd get these people that I'm helping my relative going to a certain part of town, and these other people shopping in another part of town, but they come together and they feel totally natural, and that's community. So that's what we want. Bring them all together. We are one community, and I commend you, Devin. That's awesome. And I think that's what we should aspire to. That's what removes the stigma. Choice, bringing the community together. So awesome.
Thank you. Really great thoughts on this. Brittany, do you have anything to add before we move on to comments or questions? I'm sorry.
No, not really. I think what I said earlier about using the cards, that don't necessarily mean that you're receiving help. That's our biggest effort right now, and adjusting those prices. I think there's a lot of dignity in online shopping too. You're from the comfort of your home. If you can get a price you can afford and have it delivered to your door, that really provides a lot of privacy and a lot of comfort, and still gives that choice. Sorry if that was a loud vehicle going.
Thank you, Brittany. So we've had a few questions pop up in the comment section. I know that we talked a little bit about farmers markets and working with farmers markets. We have Bennett Driscoll who's asking, can you talk about how you use farmers markets to share your message? So I don't know who here works directly with farmers markets, that maybe someone can speak to that.
We are at farmers market, but I don't know if Brittany, you might even have a more substantial presence at markets.
Last Saturday was our first farmers market. So we're brand new at doing this, at offering our services at the market. But I think it's a wonderful resource. It's a wonderful outlet, and you can meet a lot of people in the community there. But one thing that I'm always mindful of is that the folks that are able to make it to the market might not be as inclusive of a group as we'd like to think it is. You know, farmers markets have relatively limited hours. The prices are higher than other shopping outlets, which can be a challenge for people. So I think whenever possible, trying to pull more folks into the market and giving them access and the ability to reduce the prices or use SNAP is really critical if you're working through the markets. And I think leveraging the farmers market committees and leveraging the networks that each vendor has can be really powerful as well.
Thank you, Brittany. We also had a question from Jennifer Hatch that she asked about folks having difficult with accessing internet. So I think that might have been directed at you, Brittany, but when we were talking about like delivery or online ordering, have any of you come up against that as a barrier? I know we have here at CEO. So if anyone wants to speak to that, or Jackie from a consumer perspective wants to speak to that.
I can say that, you know, sometimes it is, I can't say that I'd have Wi-Fi access if I had to skip on that bill and pay another one that month. So there may not be Wi-Fi access unless I go somewhere, and, depending on where you are, if you don't have transportation, it might be hard to get there. So, but I do want to say that there are some programs out there right now that are offering discounted Wi-Fi service. And I think there's some kind of assistance with paying like $50 a month, paying your Wi-Fi bill also. So if, people may not be aware that that's out there, but that is out there. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jackie. That was a great thing to bring in.
For the online ordering system that we helped the Hub on the Hill develop, we were, very sure to also have a phone number that people can call to place their orders as well. And then in getting the word out about the program, we didn't rely solely on digital channels, so advertisements in the newspaper and reaching out to networks and referral partners and getting flyers out there as well. We had flyers included at food pantries around the region and things of that nature. But it's a really big challenge because we all know how much efficiency can come from using digital channels. So it's certainly tricky, but we make an effort through having a warm person at the end of the phone line to help place that order online. Absolutely.
So I'm thinking we might have time for one more question. I'm looking at these, and I thought an interesting one was asking about opportunities. Florian asks that several of us mentioned food recovery from farms. So do you utilize or see any opportunities to reclaim food from other sources? And I know a couple of you do, restaurants, supermarkets for distribution to food insecure individuals. Why or why not?
I could take that one and then pass the mic. We do recover food from retail locations, primarily our grocery store and our community's Hannaford. And that's actually set up through the regional food bank. And that's a good variety of food. It complements the produce that we're mainly able to get from farm sources with bread and protein sources as well. I would say that our focus and emphasis is on the farm sources because we feel like us bringing volunteer labor into the fields is benefiting the farm as long as we properly train those volunteers and they're culling what they should. And then you just have a lot more shelf life more often than not with the food product, where at a retailer, I would think especially a restaurant, the turnaround has to be pretty quick unless you have the capability to freeze or store in a longer term way.
Yeah, for us, I guess it's scale. So we would work with produce farms, like all winter. We worked with growers and shippers in Florida. So let's say if there was something that they had access of, because when they put these crops in, they have no control over when they're going to ripen, and when that stuff starts to come to harvest, they sell what they can sell to their stores and their distributors, and then there's always excess, and we try to jump in there and have them give us whatever break they can on that. When there's not access, we try to get what's called imperfect, because a lot of them pack for retail and something's a little bit off, so we'll go after that. And then we also try to acquire whatever we can that gets damaged or lost in transportation. So a lot of these trucks, like we got a call the other day, X number of pallets of greens that was rejected. And so we'll take it and work with it. It could be rejected for, the box could be bent. It could have been off 1 degree. We also work with mass distribution centers. So when we would get something, it would be, if not a full trailer load, multiple pallets thereof. So it's scale, what Devin's doing and what we're doing. You have both sides of the spectrum. But absolutely, we go after it. All of us do.
Thank you, Mike. I feel like the topics that have come up at this panel, we could probably talk for an entire afternoon about these things, or maybe a whole day. So thank you guys so much, the panelists, for all of your thoughts and for sharing what you do. And I thought that there was some just getting into this, but some great ideas. I hope that our viewers were writing things down and were getting excited, because I thought this was a really energizing panel. And I really appreciated everyone's thoughts and time today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Renata. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks everyone listening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.